The galaxy begged for aid. Terrans brought retribution. The galaxy was falling apart. Stars that once shined with peace now burned with fire and death. For centuries, alien empires had lived in fragile balance, trading, fighting, rebuilding, and surviving. But now all of them faced a terror none could withstand. They were called the Devourers. No one knew where they had come from. Some said they were born in the dark between galaxies. Others whispered that they were ancient machines older than time itself. But one thing was clear. Wherever the Devourers arrived, nothing survived. Entire worlds were turned into ash. Fleets that had stood for thousands of years were destroyed in hours. Armies with the strongest weapons could not even slow them down. The Galactic Council, the so-called rulers of civilization, could only watch as system after system burned. At first they told their people to stay calm, to believe in their leaders. But hope was dying faster than the stars. Desperation spread like a shadow. Refugee ships filled the skies, running from one system to another, never safe. Great empires that once called themselves eternal begged their enemies for alliances. Former rivals stood together, but even then, the Devourers crushed them without mercy. Their fleets were endless, their hunger unstoppable. The galaxy understood the truth. This was not a war they could win. It was extinction. In the council chamber, alien leaders argued and screamed. Some wanted to surrender. Some wanted to hide. Others demanded sacrifice of weaker species just to buy more time. None of them offered a solution. They were powerful, yes, but their power had limits. And the Devourers had no limits. At last, the council decided to do the unthinkable. They sent out a call, a signal broadcast across the stars. It was not a message of pride or strength. It was a message of fear. They begged for help. If anyone is out there, if any species has the strength we do not, hear us, we are dying. We are falling. We beg you, help us. When that signal went out, the galaxy trembled. Empires that once called themselves mighty had dropped their pride and admitted the truth. They could not save themselves. For a long time, there was no answer. The Devourers kept moving, kept destroying, kept consuming everything in their path. The council began to believe their message was nothing but wasted breath sent into the void. But then, something unexpected happened. A reply came back. Not from a great empire. Not from a race known across the stars. The answer came from a species that most in the galaxy considered unimportant. They were called Terrans. The council had heard their name before, but only in whispers. They were newcomers, a young species from a small world at the edge of the spiral arm. Their technology was far behind the old empires. Their colonies were few. No one believed they mattered. And yet the message was clear, simple, and carried a weight that shook those who heard it. We heard your call, the human said. We are coming. At first the council laughed. The mighty galaxy begging for help, and the ones who answered were humans, primitive creatures with a short history and no real power. It was a cruel joke. Leaders whispered that perhaps the Terrans did not even understand the threat. Perhaps they thought it was a small war, a battle they could join to gain fame. The council dismissed them. They turned their eyes back to their own failures, believing the humans would never arrive. But deep down, in the hearts of those who listened carefully, there was something in the Terran voice that felt different. They did not sound like creatures rushing to save friends. They did not sound like allies seeking peace. They sounded like predators who had found their prey. Their words carried no fear, no hesitation, only certainty, and then came the silence. The council waited, confused. No more messages came from the Terrans. Days passed, then weeks. While the Devourers continued their march, the humans gave no explanation, no demand, no promise. It was as if they had said all that was needed in those few words. In the refugee fleets, whispers began to spread. The Terrans have answered. For the broken and the desperate, it became a spark of hope. For the powerful and the proud, it became a source of unease. Who were these humans? Why did they not sound afraid? And why did their promise feel more like a warning than a gift? The galaxy did not know it yet. But the moment that message arrived, everything had changed. The council had begged for help. The galaxy had cried out for salvation. But what was coming was not mercy. What was coming was not charity. The Terrans had heard their desperate plea. And the Terrans were bringing something else entirely. They were bringing retribution. The galaxy did not believe the humans would come. Many leaders mocked the message. Some called it the desperate bragging of a primitive race. Others dismissed it as noise in the signal. The council returned to their endless arguments, convinced that no help was coming. But far away in the silent darkness of interstellar space, something began to move. The Terrans had heard the plea. They had studied the reports, the intercepted transmissions, the desperate cries of dying worlds. They had learned everything about the Devourers, their weapons, their ships, their patterns of attack. Where other species saw an unstoppable tide, the humans saw something else. A challenge. For centuries, Terrans had been forged in war. Their history was not one of peace but of conflict. They had fought each other, torn their own world apart, and then rebuilt it stronger each time. They had survived plague, famine, nuclear fire, and countless disasters. To the galaxy, humanity was young. To themselves, they were ancient survivors. And now, for the first time, their eyes were turned outward, toward an enemy that threatened more than their small corner of space. The humans were not answering for kindness. They were answering because this was the kind of war they understood. When the first Terran fleet arrived, the galaxy stopped laughing. The ships did not shine with beauty like the elegant vessels of the elder races. They were not curved, glowing, or filled with delicate art. Terran warships were black and brutal, designed not to impress but to kill. Their hulls were thick, scarred with old battles, their weapons heavy and merciless. Where alien fleets moved with grace, human fleets moved like a hammer falling toward its target. The council gathered to watch the arrival. They expected a small force, maybe a handful of ships, enough for the humans to make a symbolic gesture. What emerged from the void was far more. Hundreds of Terran warships came forward in silence, their formations sharp and exact. Their engines burned brighter than expected, their design simple but powerful. It was not beauty. It was purpose. When the humans opened a channel, there were no long speeches, no flowery greetings. Their leader appeared on the screen, a scarred face, eyes hard as stone. His words were simple, but they carried weight heavier than any council law. "We do not fight for peace," he said. "We fight for justice, and we fight to win." The chamber fell silent. No one dared laugh anymore. Rumors began to spread across the galaxy like fire. Stories of human soldiers training endlessly, of Terran engineers building weapons with terrifying speed, of commanders who had never known defeat. The stories grew darker as they spread. Some said Terran fleets carried weapons forbidden by galactic law. Others said humans did not take prisoners, that they fought until nothing was left standing. But the most disturbing rumor was not about their weapons. It was about their eyes. Soldiers who met them said Terrans carried a fire in their gaze, a fire that no other species had. They did not look like rescuers. They looked like predators. When asked why they came, the Terran commander answered only once. "You begged, we heard. Now we bring retribution." The council did not know how to respond. Some were grateful, others were terrified. But one truth could not be ignored: the humans were here and they were ready to fight. They had not come with mercy. They had come with war. Alien strategists studied Terran tactics and were left unsettled. The humans did not defend like the council did. They did not build lines to hold back the Devourers. Instead, they prepared to strike. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon was aimed not at surviving but at destroying. The Terrans did not believe in stalemates. They believed in victory or death. In the refugee fleets, whispers turned to hope. The Terrans are not afraid. Families hiding in the dark clung to that thought like it was life itself. For the first time in years, they dreamed of survival. But in the high chambers of power, fear spread. What kind of species answered a cry for help with such cold fury? What kind of people promised not safety but vengeance? The galaxy had begged for aid, and now the Terrans had arrived. No one could yet imagine what their war would look like. No one could see how far their wrath would reach. But deep down, every leader, every soldier, every refugee felt the same cold truth. The humans had not come to join the galaxy. They had come to show it what true war looked like, and the Devourers, they were about to learn the meaning of fear. The galaxy waited for the Terrans to act. Refugees prayed, leaders doubted, and the Devourers continued their endless march. A dozen worlds had already fallen in the last month. The Council feared that even the humans, with all their bold words, would be broken like the rest. But the Terrans had no intention of waiting for the enemy to choose the battlefield. They chose it themselves. The humans studied the Devourers carefully. Where others saw chaos, the Terrans saw patterns. They noticed how the swarm always consumed outer colonies first, then moved inward like a tide. They noticed how their fleets spread wide, overwhelming defenses with numbers but leaving their center vulnerable for moments at a time. The Council had missed these details. The humans did not. For them, war was not just defense. It was art. When the next system came under attack, the galaxy expected another tragedy. The world of Karash, a place of glowing seas and crystal cities, was next in line. The Devourers arrived in force, their ships blotting out the stars, their ground armies descending like black rain. The Council had already written the world off. But the Terrans were there. There was no warning. No speeches. No promises. When the Devourers began their attack, the humans struck. The first sign was silence. Alien observers noticed the swarm's outer fleet suddenly vanish from sensors. Then explosions filled the skies. Terran ships emerged from the void, their black hulls cutting through the enemy lines with brutal precision. They did not form elegant formations or follow Council-approved strategies. They moved like hunters, each ship attacking with ruthless intent. Their weapons were terrifying. While the Council's fleets used energy blasts and particle beams, the Terrans unleashed weapons of kinetic destruction. Giant slugs of metal, accelerated to impossible speeds, tore through Devourer hulls as if they were paper. Missiles swarmed like angry hornets, ripping apart enemy formations with fire that burned brighter than suns. Where alien fleets fought to survive, Terran fleets fought to kill. Every strike was designed to end the enemy, not to hold them back. On the ground, Terran soldiers deployed with the same ferocity. While Devourer troops poured into the cities of Karash, human dropships fell like meteors. Soldiers in black armor stormed the streets, their weapons roaring with thunder. They did not retreat, they did not hide, they charged directly into the heart of the swarm. To the refugees watching, it looked less like a defense and more like a slaughter. For the first time in history, the Devourers hesitated. Their endless tide broke for a moment as human fire tore through them. Entire waves of their armies were cut down. Their ships, which had never known defeat, began to fall back in confusion. The swarm, which had crushed every species in its path, found itself bleeding under Terran fury. But the most terrifying thing was not the weapons. It was the humans themselves. Council observers who watched the battle swore the Terrans were not fighting like soldiers. They were fighting like executioners. Their movements were cold, precise, and merciless. When a Devourer ship tried to escape, the humans hunted it down. When enemy soldiers surrendered, the humans did not stop firing. To them, this was not a battle. It was retribution. The Council chambers filled with silence as live feeds came in. Leaders who once mocked the Terrans now sat pale and speechless. They had begged for aid, and aid had come, but in a form they had never imagined. The Devourers, the unstoppable terror of the galaxy, were losing, and it was not because of mercy or diplomacy. It was because the humans fought as if vengeance itself guided their hands. On Karash, the last Devourer ships fled into the void, burning from Terran fire. The planet was saved, though its cities lay scarred. The survivors came out from hiding and saw the humans standing among the ruins. Their armor was cracked, their weapons smoking, but their eyes burned with that same fire. The Karashian refugees tried to thank them. The Terrans only nodded once and said, "It is not over." Then they marched back to their ships. The galaxy erupted with whispers. The Terrans had done it. They had defeated the Devourers in open battle. For the first time in living memory, the unstoppable had been stopped. Hope spread like light across the stars. Refugees spoke of angels of war. Soldiers whispered of demons in human flesh. Leaders wondered if they had invited something even more dangerous than the Devourers themselves. Because while the galaxy rejoiced, they also remembered the Terran commander's words. The humans had not come for peace. They had come for justice. And when they looked upon the destruction left behind, it was clear that justice for humanity meant only one thing: retribution without end. The galaxy should have celebrated. For the first time in living memory, the Devourers had been driven back. A world had been saved, and the enemy's endless advance had slowed. But instead of cheers, there was unease. The Council watched the recordings of Karash again and again, and what they saw unsettled them more than the enemy ever had. The humans had won, yes, but they had fought with a fury no one had ever witnessed. The Devourers were known for cruelty, but the Terrans matched it in kind. They had not spared survivors among the enemy. They had not allowed retreat. They had not fought like soldiers protecting the helpless. They had fought like executioners delivering punishment. Whispers spread in the council halls. Some called the Terrans saviors, Others called them monsters. The question grew louder each day. When the Devourers are gone, what will the humans do then? The Terran fleets did not wait for approval from the Council. They struck again and again, each time choosing the battlefield themselves. Where the Devourers moved, the humans were already waiting. They fought with a precision that terrified even their allies. Whole systems that should have been lost were saved but in ruins. Terran bombardments leveled enemy fleets but also shattered cities, glassed landscapes, and left scars that would never heal. To them, it seemed, no cost was too high as long as the enemy was destroyed. On refugee worlds, hope burned bright. Survivors called the humans angels of war, protectors who had done the impossible. Children painted their ships on broken walls. Old priests prayed to them as instruments of fate. But in the hidden chambers of the Council, fear grew. The Terrans were not asking for payment. They were not demanding territory or power. They asked for nothing at all. And that was what frightened the elders most. A species that fought without reward was a species no one could control. The Devourers themselves began to adapt, changing their strategies. They concentrated their forces, abandoning minor systems to strike with overwhelming strength. Yet even then the humans met them head-on. Every victory was brutal, every battle painted with fire. The galaxy saw something in the humans that chilled them to the core. The Devourers had always been feared because they could not be stopped. Now the humans were feared because they would not stop. In one council session, an elder from the Ziyari Empire spoke with trembling words. We begged them for aid and they came. But what if their aid is worse than our enemy? The Devourers consume worlds, yes, but the Terrans burn them in their path. When this war is over, who will remain to stand against them? No one answered. Because deep inside, many shared the same thought. The humans themselves remained silent. They did not join council debates, did not seek alliances or approval. Their fleets operated alone, answering only to their own commanders. When questioned about their goals, the answer was always the same. It ends when the Devourers are gone. But how it would end, no one could predict. The galaxy began to split in its view of the Terrans. Refugees worshipped them as heroes. Soldiers spoke their name with awe, telling stories of their unbreakable will. But leaders, politicians, and rulers looked at the humans with dread. What kind of species answered a desperate plea with such merciless fire? What kind of people fought not for survival but for vengeance? It was then that the first secret plans were whispered. Some council members spoke of watching the humans closely, of limiting their power once the war was done. Others, more fearful, wondered if preparations should begin to defend against humanity itself. These whispers never left the chambers, but the suspicion had already taken root. And yet, for all their fear, none could deny the truth. Without the Terrans, the galaxy was doomed. With the Terrans, it might survive, but at a terrible cost. The war raged on. Devourer fleets fell one after another. Terran victories stacked like mountains of fire. But in every shadowed corner, in every quiet council hall, a question echoed louder and louder. Who will the Terrans fight when the Devourers are no more? The end came sooner than anyone expected. For months the Terrans had fought, carving victory after victory from the jaws of extinction. The Devourers, for the first time in their endless history, had been forced to retreat. But they were not finished. They gathered everything, every fleet, every weapon, every soldier of their dark swarm. Their plan was simple: to crush the humans in one final storm and break the fragile hope of the galaxy forever. The place they chose was the system of Vera, a shining cluster of habitable worlds near the galactic core. Billions of refugees had fled there, believing the Council's promises of protection. The Devourers wanted more than conquest. They wanted a massacre. And so their fleets poured in by the thousands, darkening the stars with their numbers. The Council panicked. Leaders begged the Terrans to defend. Others demanded evacuation. But the humans did not argue. They gave only 3 words: we end this. When the Terran armada arrived, the galaxy held its breath. The black warships appeared like shadows ripping through the void, engines burning brighter than suns. They did not come with fanfare or diplomacy. They came like executioners ready for the final judgment. The battle began with fire. Devourer fleets surged forward in waves, their weapons shrieking across the stars. Entire planets trembled as the swarm struck. But the humans did not fall back. They did not scatter like the Council's fleets had in the past. They advanced, Terran warships cut into the swarm like blades of iron. Their kinetic weapons split enemy hulls apart. Nuclear fire bloomed in the darkness, tearing through entire formations. Missiles howled across the battlefield, turning massive carriers into burning wrecks. Every Terran ship fought with one goal: to destroy, not survive. On the ground, the Devourers unleashed their armies upon the refugee worlds. But the humans had already landed. Terran soldiers fought in every street, every ruined city, their black armor shining under fire. They fought like creatures possessed, never yielding, never stopping. Their weapons roaring with thunder until entire enemy swarms were reduced to corpses. Refugees who had once known only fear now looked upon the humans with awe and terror, whispering prayers to warriors who did not act like mortals but like gods of war. The Council, watching from their distant stations, could hardly believe it. The Devourers, the nightmare that had consumed half the galaxy, were losing. Not slowly, not evenly, but brutally. Every wave they sent was torn apart. Every trick they tried was met with counterstrikes that shattered their fleets. Hours passed. The stars themselves seemed to burn with the fury of the conflict. At last, the Devourer command ship, a massive fortress that had led countless conquests, came into view. Larger than a moon, covered in black spines, it radiated power and dread. No Council fleet had ever even touched it. The Terrans did not hesitate. They formed their ships into a spear and drove straight toward it. Thousands of human lives were lost as the swarm closed in, but still they pressed forward. Missiles streaked, cannons roared, and entire enemy fleets were sacrificed to shield their command. The Terrans did not stop. They never stopped. At last, the Terran flagship reached firing range. The commander's voice echoed across the fleet. For every world they burned, for every life they stole, end it. The final strike was unleashed. A weapon of unimaginable power hidden until now was fired from the Terran flagship. A lance of light brighter than any star tore through the void, piercing the Devourer command ship from end to end. For a moment, silence ruled the battlefield. Then the fortress erupted in fire, its black hull shattering into fragments. The swarm froze, leaderless, broken, their endless tide scattered like ash in the wind. The Devourers were finished. The war was over. Across the galaxy, refugees wept in relief. Leaders cheered in disbelief. For the first time in memory, there was peace. But the humans did not celebrate. They did not raise flags or shout a victory. Their fleet stood in silence among the wreckage, weapons still hot, eyes still burning with fire. The Council sent messages of thanks. They begged for alliances, treaties, recognition. The Terrans answered only once. Their commander's voice was cold, heavy, unforgettable. We did not come for gratitude. We did not come for peace. We came because justice demanded it. The Devourers are ended. Remember this, we are not saviors. We are not caretakers. We are Terrans. If the galaxy ever breeds such evil again, we will return, and we will bring retribution. Then, as suddenly as they had come, the humans vanished back into the void. Their fleets disappeared into the dark between stars, leaving only ruins, silence, and the memory of their wrath. The galaxy was saved, but it would never be the same. Children grew up hearing stories of the black warships and the soldiers who fought like fire. Refugees whispered of angels of war. Leaders spoke in private of demons unleashed. And everywhere, in every corner of the stars, one truth remained. The galaxy had begged for aid. The Terrans had answered. But what they had brought was not mercy. They had brought retribution.